All right. Welcome to the February 4th, 2026 Cottonwood Heights Planning Commission meeting. Tonight, we want to welcome all of our guests here and online and start off with discussions and going into any ex parte communications or conflicts of interest needing to be disclosed.
Nope.
No.
There are none. We will now move forward to the general public comment. This is an opportunity for individuals to make general public comments that do not relate to any projects scheduled for public hearing under the business items. So if you are here to discuss either project CUP 26-002 or project SUB 26001, this is not the time to speak. This is for any general comments from the public.
Mr. Chair, if I can beg your indulgence, my daughter-in-law is at a hospital in Layton having my third grandchild. I'd like to go. And so if I can, I'd like to clear up some of the comments that were made about the Canyon Center project.
And we will discuss that here in just a moment. We will bump the schedule on that specific space.
I'd like to go be with my son and my daughter-in-law as soon as possible.
Okay.
Okay.
Acknowledged. Thank you. Any other public comments? I see none. We will move on, and by the request of the applicant, we will move project SUB 26-001 to the first item of business, which is a public hearing to take a possible action on a subdivision amendment request by Chris Ensign and Encore Development for a 36-unit condo building located at 7341 South Canyon Center Parkway. We will have the staff presentation.
Right, just give me 2 seconds here.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so this is for project number SUB-26-001. The action requested is a plat amendment for the Canyon Center condominiums amended number 1 plat. The applicant is Chris Ensign from Encore Development LLC. Property is located at 7367 East Canyon Center Parkway. Staff does recommend approval with conditions. The subject property is located within the Canyon Center Master Development. It carries a zoning designation of MU mixed use and is in the Gateway Overlay District. A little background, the Canyon Center Master Development Plan was approved back in 2014. And part of that approval was the dedication of Lot 1 to the city for the future Park Plaza. In October of 2024, the master plan was amended to remove the office entitlement of 56,000 square feet of office space, and with the approval of with a 36-unit residential condominium building in place of the office space. That approval did carry a deadline for the completion of the condominium building to be completed by December 31st of 2028. Being this is a public hearing, staff did mail 144 notices on January 23rd. During that noticing period, we did not receive any formal comments or concerns. As mentioned, this is a request to amend Unit 2B of the Canyon Center condominium, amended number 1 plat to formally plat 36 previously approved residential condominium units and establish easements and maintenance agreements across lots 1 and lot 2 of the Canyon Center development to provide maintenance agreements for encroachments as well as parking and pedestrian access. As mentioned, this proposal does include the platting of 36 residential condominium units. Upon review, staff has determined that this request is consistent with the base zone, which is mixed use, which does allow residential condominium units. And as well, it is consistent with the previously approved master development plan amendment. Part of this request does require adding some additional easements across the existing plat and on it, in addition to lot 1 as well. And this is to designate the private and public parking areas. Here you can see in this illustration, the areas highlighted in pink are areas that are designated as private parking, which would be at the service of Unit 2A, which is the hotel. The parking stalls that are highlighted in green, these would be public parking spaces, which would be available for public access. These parking spaces are consistent with the approved Canyon Center parking agreement. Now, a lot of the reasons why we would like to see these noted on the plat is just to clarify what, where these parking to designate the parking in private areas on the site and to hopefully increase the enforceability, again, if people aren't complying with these requirements. And again, additional easements and maintenance agreements are in the works. We kind of briefly talked about this in the work meeting, being that the structure itself or the entrances is placed, I guess, abuts the boundary line of lot 1. And by doing so, some existing improvements or proposed improvements for the entryway of the plaza and the parking, the applicant is proposing, I guess, due to the proximity of the structure to lot 1, a ventilation shaft will be inherently on city property, as well as a stairway, a planter box, some flat work, and electrical junction box. Now, currently, as per approved per the development agreement, lot 1 will be dedicated to the city for the future park. So in that case, as I mentioned, we need to address this. As mentioned, it will be on public property, and we are currently in discussion with the developer regarding what that maintenance agreement looks like, and as far as pedestrian access goes for crossing lot 1 to lot 2 to access the building. Part of these discussions do include consolidating these improvements to reduce the area of encumbrance. And one of the discussions we had was to move the electrical box further to the west up against the planter box to open up this area here for pedestrian access out to the park, or potentially moving the utility box to the north in front of the primary of the front of the building, where it could be screened, and that will clearly be the most beneficial to the city, as one, it removes it off city property. 2, it opens up that space and removes the encumbrance and the potential of the impedance of the utility box on pedestrian access, as well as any future amenities proposed for the park in this area.
And Sheldon, just to clarify on that, the original development agreement, these were already on the public amenity. Was the ventilation as well as the planter box on the public amenity originally as well?
I don't, the original approval didn't show that much detail in this particular area.
Okay.
So, yeah, my assumption.
But the transformer or the electric
Yeah.
junction box, that was just on the
Yeah.
west side, is that
Yeah,
correct?
Originally, the transformer was proposed to be in this location here.
Okay. And then ventilation, that was just not acknowledged on the original plat.
I mean, it was probably there, maybe I overlooked it doing my initial research, but my assumption is that it's a ventilation shaft, probably providing ventilation for the parking structure. So I'm assuming it's probably an existing portion of the building. Talking with Chris, and I believe Chris is here. he could provide probably better insight on that. But I believe that was structurally part of the actual, of the parking structure itself. Now, the planner itself was something, an amenity that the developer decided to add just to liven up the space, to aesthetically make it more pleasing, as opposed to just having an open space of concrete. They wanted to do a planner there and kind of dress up that area. And in addition to those negotiations regarding the maintenance agreement and access across, well, in addition to the negotiations about the maintenance agreement and about relocating and relocating the actual electrical junction and consolidating that space, there's also requirements to provide easements for pedestrian access to cross lots 1 and lot 2. And again, those are part of the negotiations. We haven't came to an agreement yet. Those are things we're still working on. We figure, we'll probably 3-4 weeks out on that at least, to dial in that agreement. And again, this has been reviewed by the city attorney. We've involved Scott with the ARC committee as well, to get his inputs on some of the location and some of these improvements as well, with the end goal of hopefully getting something that works both for the developer and the city. So based on these findings, the plat amendment is consistent with the mixed-use zone and the Canyon Center Development and Parking Agreement. The request implements previously approved entitlements and does not increase density or alter the approved site layout. Access to utility and maintenance issues can be adequately addressed through conditions of approval. And if the subdivision amendment is approved by the planning commission, the project will then go through a full technical review for final platting. Based on those findings, staff does recommend approval with the following conditions. Just to quickly outline these conditions. Condition 1, this is kind of restating a requirement per ordinance. I just want to make sure that's clearly provided to the applicant, that we do require will serve letters before they can record the plat. The second requirement is just essentially what we discussed, is working on those easements and access agreements, coming to a conclusion where the city does approve those agreements. And at that point, the applicant can move forward with recording the plat. The third one is geared more towards, just that conversation we're having about reducing those encumbrances on that site where those improvements are located on city property. Condition number 4 is just the final plat. At that time, all easements should be prepared and approved by the city. In addition to recording those, showing those on the plat, they shall be recorded as separate instruments with the county. And then 5, finally, again, this is kind of restating what's in city ordinances, that there's a time limit on the validity of the approval, which is 1 year from the hearing, from the date of approval. So the applicant has 1 year to record the plat before it expires. Again, they do have the option to request an extension at the request under the authority of the Planning Commission. You guys have any questions for me at this point?
No questions at this time. If we could please hear from the applicant.
I'm Donald Ray, here in behalf of Encore Development. And I think the staff covered it well. And we're just seeking approval so we can move forward, and we're working through the issues with the easement maintenance agreements. But I think it was covered pretty well with staff.
Any questions from the Planning Commission?
I think you heard our discussion in the work session. You have anything that you'd like to add or contribute to the discussion about parking, given the modification of the use of the structure?
No, nothing to add for me at this time.
Is there any flexibility in what you guys are able to do in terms of those parking spots that are so close to the public amenity, especially now that you're going to have 3 levels of parking and maybe a decreased need for surface parking for condominiums versus a business building?
I didn't hear the conversation in the work session, so I'm not I'm not sure what the concerns there were.
We're hoping that the frontage of your beautiful condominium building will be preserved, and that abutting up to a public park is such a great and unique space that a spiral parking space with pie-shaped parking places may be less than ideal for just the frontage of your own beautiful multi-million-dollar building. And that in addition, as this project has evolved with the number of taxing entities that were involved in trying to preserve a public amenity, and through a number of factors that I'm sure predated you and your group's involvement, the park has been reduced. And that's neither here nor there how we got to that. And the fact that it's entitled, we understand that you have a right to do exactly what you've described. What I'm asking is there anything in terms of the ability to be flexible, understanding the desirability of that public amenity in terms of what you guys can provide for the public?
Yeah, so I don't, if just to clarify, I don't think, so we're not seeking any parking modifications whatsoever from the current plan that was, I think, previously approved. And then what we are trying to do is accommodate and facilitate taking care of that easement section to enable ingress and access to the underground parking.
So we clarified that it is making some modifications, not to the parking agreement, but the fact that there are lots that are parking spaces that are lined out that were not earmarked as parking spaces previously, and that those parking spaces were calculated initially based on the needs of a business building versus the needs of 36 condos. And last time that you guys presented to us, and we wanted to make sure that you had enough dedicated parking underneath, accessing all 3 levels of our parking structure under there. I think there is some hope that, and again, this was not outlined specifically, so we understand what you're entitled to. We're hoping there might be flexibility in terms of I'm hoping that there might be flexibility in terms of what your real need is for those surface parking spots right out the front door versus 3 levels of access to underground parking.
Yeah, so my understanding is that we gave up 17 stalls there, and we don't have concerns about the parking for the tenants. So I may am missing your question, but I think we're definitely open to working with the city on whatever the needs are, but I think we've accommodated already in that attempt with those 17 stalls right there. And I don't think we have any concerns about availability for parking for potential residents.
So if you feel like there's sufficient parking underneath, is there a scenario where there could be some flexibility in the parking that's up above ground in this, as described in this picture?
There could be. I'd have to consult with Chris. I hadn't talked with him about that, but
Wonderful.
I think we'd made an attempt, or he'd made an attempt to, with those 17 stalls already, and I think definitely he's workable and would be open to whatever needs to be considered.
And I mean, again, I know the previous city councils and planning commissions have tried to lean in, and especially with this adaptation, the changes in the market and the fact that this property is sat for some time, that there is some enthusiasm by many about the use of this space. But I again, being adaptable, and I think there might be able to be something that would be mutually beneficial. And we have planning staff that a lot of these decisions predated all 4 of our planning staff, and most of our city council and most of our planning commission. So again, I understand that Mr. McCandless has been there from the beginning to understand kind of where this is, and there's been a lot of work that's been done. But I just, again, we understand what you're entitled to. But this is, again, what the ebbs and flows and how this is happened in the public space, there's a chance here with sufficient, more than adequate parking underneath. In fact, access to overflow superseding any other tenant on the property, basically, in terms of access to underground parking. It seems like there might be the ability to be a little flexible in that last piece there and increase the value of the frontage to a multi-million-dollar project for you guys. So that's all I have, Chair.
Jim, question for you or Sheldon. The exhibit that we have on the screen right here, this is the original agreement
That-
for the plat of the office building.
This is actually the exhibit in the parking agreement showing designating the parking spaces for the overall site.
And this was originally approved in the development agreement. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. So I just want to make sure because Commissioner Mills, you had mentioned that the public amenity has shrunk a few times. I haven't seen any documentation on the public amenity shrinking.
That would go back to the position of the road, and we can get into details of this, but the way that the city road had to be moved and the way the parking was handled. There are a number of, I mean, there's a number of factors in terms of where the structures landed relative to what everyone's intent was at first. And from the original city council and if you go back to the very, very first drawings to where it landed right now, it's diminished. And so I think that's neither here nor there. I mean, we are where we are and everything is where it is. I'm just saying if there's a chance for us to extend it a little bit, there's a lot of goodwill that could potentially happen if we can do it and again, this will be completely up to the applicant because really we understand we're entitled and we're encumbered, as you pointed out clearly, that by the parking agreement and the way it's been approved and platted. I'm simply asking for the consideration, if it were agreeable to the applicant, to work with staff to see if we couldn't improve something that's mutually beneficial for both the applicant and the city.
I just wanted to ensure that as a commission, we're not missing any documentation because from my understanding, this has been original to the agreement and the development agreement as well as the platting of this. The main concern within our purview is going to be really just the conduitization of 2B here. Original, and I think where some of your concerns here is in that spiral. The original had parking in there, and I think that just from a pure clarification standpoint, that parking is consistently in place with what the applicant is providing. I think something that is important for us to review is the encumbrance of the public amenity of the transformer or the electrical switch boxes there. Just as far as, making sure that is shielded appropriately and is not a nuisance to the public amenity. From that standpoint, I don't know what we can imply on the applicant because they're staying consistent with the original use as well as the original parking plan. I just want to make sure that as a commission, we're on the same page with that because there hasn't been any shrinking of the public amenity.
I disagree with that, Chair. If you go back, and you can go back to the city council minutes, the movement of that road and where it had to be positioned from the initial interactions with Mr. McCandless when this project was proposed over 10 years ago had to be moved because of some functional reasons. And so what the public thought they were going to get for very appropriate reasons related to fire access and parking of in the other components of this entire development, there were a lot of moving pieces. And so what started with a sizable, there was going to be a park with a lot of distributed buildings around the outside of it, just out of functional need and to meet the needs of the greater development had to be confined a little bit more and a little bit more. And again, it was no malintent by anybody involved, but what the public is now left with is substantially different than the very first proposals. And that's the nature of development. I understand that, but I'm simply, as a planning commissioner, representing the public interest in that, in something that has had tax implications from multiple entities, and I think is appropriate to do so.
And I would agree with you on that. And I just want to make sure that there's clarification that there was no change since the development agreement was penciled and agreed upon by the city. Even in the negotiations of the tax increment financing and everything else that was associated with that. So with the autonomy of development and, the push and pull of development, I am not seeing any change since the agreement with the city and the developer, the original developer. There's no change. There's no proposed change. So within our purview, there's not been any shrinkage to public amenity. Public amenities remain consistent to what was agreed upon 10 years ago when this whole development was agreed.
Well, and again, that
I would
wasn't-
again disagree with you, Dan. I'm going to join with you in that disagreement. That is not the case. There is a significant change in the public good that was proposed at the time the tax increment financing was done. Having said that, I'm not sure, Commissioner Mills, if the concession you're looking for is the elimination of that circular public parking. Is that what's on your mind? Because I will say, this is not much of a public amenity. There's very little reason for the public to go there. And the truth is that public parking around that circle will probably be used by the hotel. And given that they're members of the public, they can use it. They can, we can't prohibit them from parking there. But the idea of that parking was that people going to the public amenity could park adjacent to it. And so if that were a good public amenity, I certainly wouldn't argue to eliminate the parking adjacent to it.
I'm satisfied with the applicant's answers, so thank you for your consideration. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Not right now, but later. Yes.
Wonderful. We will open up the public comment hearing on this for project SUB-26-001. Now, we do have some speaker comment cards here within the public comments. If we could have actually first starting off, Chris McCandless.
Thank you. She's dilated to a 7. Anybody's interested? Couple of comments that have been made in the work session. I sat here. Fairly intuitive because some of your comments were actually taken into consideration, and the amendment to the parking plan, which is recorded as part of the shared parking agreement, was taken into consideration. I have a copy of it on my phone, and public parking from what it was, there's 432 parking stalls in the structured parking. There's 580 parking stalls in the project, something like that. I'm talking a little bit from memory, in the entire project, right? And so when the office building went away, which has a limitation through the development agreement of 4 per 1,000 parking stalls, I can't park 5 per 1,000 because the development agreement limited us to it because they didn't want a call center in that facility. So when we got the idea of converting it to something more useful after COVID, of course, office buildings just tanked. I mean, it's just been a difficult time for those of us who have office buildings. We'll make it through it. I don't want anybody to feel sorry for us. So what we did is we said, well, why don't we just change the lowest level of parking, because we have so much excess parking. Pretty much just allow public parking there almost all the time. And so it increased public parking from what it was by 66%. There's significantly more parking there for the public to use those stalls. For the condominiums, there's 2 things that I'd like to help clear up a little bit. The 17 stalls are on the cul-de-sac were actually originally designated, and there's an easement associated with that property that designates part of that park property, which I think is what you're referencing, as parking for hotel and private parking for the office building. The city council raised the same issues that you've talked about and said, well, why don't we change that to public parking? Because people are going to park there. They're just going to park there. You got a cul-de-sac, they're going to park their cars in there, whether we want them to or not. And so we said, along with the developer, Chris Ensign. Okay, we'll turn that into public parking. And then they said, oh, and let's let Chris Ensign develop the public parking. And he agreed to that. He's been very congenial to taking care of some of these challenges that are there. So, and it was staff's recommendation, change it from private parking to public. And they fought for it pretty hard. So I would suggest you talk to the city council and staff of the time, because that was what they wanted, not what we wanted. We conceded to that. The second part is that all of the parking on the third level of parking was always designated for residential use or office use. It's private. Nobody gets to share that parking. There's 55 stalls that could be turned into 61 parking stalls. And they have enough parking based upon what we have done. We gave them a lease on 25 stalls in P1, which is part of that agreement that we did with, if you guys want me to stop, I will.
As a representative of the HOA, I would like to grant an additional 2 minutes if that is okay by the rest of the commission.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a warehouse of information that I really don't want in my head, but I'd love to share it with you. So they have enough stalls without the public parking that's in that cul-de-sac. Do they want to build that, pay for it, deal with it over the course of their time? I think they'd be amenable to it. I just don't know if that's a good idea. I'd talk to some of the folks in the city with why they wanted that so badly. That's what happened. Second part is when we changed it to, I hear the public investment all the time, right? Well, the first original concept was that we had a $55 million project with an office building, and we created tax increment, and then we got money to help build the parking structure. Now, the money was basically a loan. We have to pay it all back through tax increment based upon Canyon Center specifically. It doesn't come from taxpayers outside the subdivision, just from Canyon Center specifically. When we went to make the change to residential, we had to get every single taxing authority to buy off on the amendment of the new plan and sign for it. The school district said, much like the apartment complex, they don't want to pay tax increment into it anymore because it's residential, and they got to educate those people. We agreed with them and said, okay. Now the end result of that is this. First, it's not $55 million anymore. It's a $105 million project. So the amount of taxes and money and goodwill that comes to this community as a result of this project is significantly greater than what it was. Second, in order for us to buy off on that, we're the low guy on the totem pole on the tax increment block. We had to buy off on the fact that we will likely never see a dime. And we were anticipating $2.1 million in tax increment. It's gone. And I still own the park. And I get to donate that to the city. This hasn't been a very profitable project for us. It took too long. COVID came along. We had a guy that bought the office building site. We had to go through a rather difficult lawsuit with him to get our property back. So we stuck it out. We hung out there with you guys. It'll be a great project when it gets done. And any questions I might answer.
Wonderful.
Anyway,
Thank you.
the parking scenario is done. It's part of the recorded deal. And so I would say talk to the city council and the staff on the 17 stalls. But people are still going to park in that cul-de-sac. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Rocco.
Good evening. My name is Rocco Verba. I am a resident of Cottonwood Heights. I live directly at 7389 South Prospector, so just one street above that. I hold master's degree in mechanical engineering and master's in business finance. I am here. I generally support the project. I have no history with the project. My home's there only for about 2.5 years. Overall, that versus office complex, I think it's fantastic, and I welcome that. And I think the design and everything they've done is very good quality. That's going to be a beautiful building, and I'm looking forward to be done. The only reason why I'm here is that this ask for the amendment to a mixed-use zone under certain circumstances may open up a Pandora door for a height adjustment from existing 36 feet to about 50 feet. There are certain provisions and conditions that may or may not exist or will exist in the future, where the applicant may come in through a certain square footage of office space on the first and second level to go to a higher height. And that is my concern because that would impact my view from my house of the valley below. That is not something that's being presented today, but this is something, if you study the code and zoning, you understand that there is an opportunity not fulfilled today. So my concern is the potential height adjustment in the future. And I appreciate the 5 conditions of approval. And from my point of view, I would recommend the commission to consider a 6th, which is not any time today or any time in the future. This would be used as an opportunity to amend the height to any future higher structure than is approved today. That is the only thing that I have to say about that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Have a good evening.
Leslie?
Good evening. My name is Leslie Kovach. I've lived in the neighborhood for 30 years. I've dealt with Chris McCandless and his property and going on and on about all the beautiful amenities he's going to offer our neighborhood. I live directly across the street. I'm currently looking, as Rocco is, at his crane. What I am asking you guys is to reconsider the above ground parking. There is no need for above ground parking except for the small amount of stalls out there. They have so many stalls underneath, as Chris McCandless pointed out to you. It was supposed to be used for ski parking. Nobody can get across the street. Let's use the parking for people to come into the park, come into the hotel, come into the restaurants. Let's use that parking that currently exists. Let's expand the public space. Our space on this side of the valley is getting squeezed. We are in a recharge zone for the water department. We need to have more land available for water to sink in to the recharge zone. We do not need more asphalt. We need less. I'm asking you to reconsider the parking structure or the parking ask that they have. I understand that it may have been on the original. I also understand that the park has been reduced. I understand that we need to do better with our planning commission. We need to do better for our public. We have a new mayor who is interested in what the public is saying. I've lived here for 30 years. This is the first time we've had somebody say, please listen to the public. I'm asking you all to consider this. Remove the additional above ground parking. Let's have a park that actually we can get to. Remember, I live on the east side. It is very difficult for me to get across Wasatch Boulevard. But I am asking you to reconsider and eliminate the above ground parking, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Brian?
Good evening. I'm Brian Isaac. I've lived here for a long time. Rockwell will tell you I pushed a hand cart. That part's not true. But and I apologize to the contractor if I'm not impugning your integrity, but I've been a contractor and developer for longer than most of you have been alive. And what I'm concerned about is the project is under construction and we're changing the development, changing the code, changing the nomenclature. It says generally mixed use developments have a maximum height of 35 feet. Quick background, when they went to build the hotel, you couldn't move in this room or the hallway. There were 200 or 300 angry people here fighting to keep the hotel to 35 feet. It says that, however, specific PUD or mixed use may allow heights of up to 50 feet if they meet specific criterion. such as including commercial office space on the first 2 stories and being located away from single-family homes. What I would ask is if the people that are going to have a vote would commit publicly that we're not going to go over 35 feet. I don't want to be back here in 2 months being angry. Now it's very calm. We're all just saying, but it says that they can go to 50 feet. So are we going to be back here in 60 days with the contractor developer saying, hey, you know, we meet the criterion, guys? And the reason that I'm concerned about this is, and I'm not impugning anybody. I think I love living in Cobham Heights. I built my house 25 years ago, and I worked in LA for 10 years. The fact that you leave in a courteous forum in LA is pretty much, you don't like it, don't build here, you know? So I really appreciate the integrity of all of you being willing to listen. But 4 years ago, we were here fighting with a developer up the street that wanted to build a condo. And it was one of the gentlemen, I don't see him here tonight, with the planning commission said, sir, you cannot build duplexes, or it's not zoned duplex. And the councilman voted yes, over top. And up the street, this condo's built. So I sent a text to the real estate developer and asked, is this zoned Airbnb? Yes, the basement is a self-sufficient lockout apartment. Sounds to me like a horizontal duplex rather than a vertical duplex. My street is zoned no PUDs. Within a 200-yard radius of my house, there's currently 6. This will be 7. So what I'm concerned about is that when the camel gets his nose in the tent, are we committed to not going over the 35 feet? Because if you look at the structural steel, the crane is 40 feet higher than the structural steel. It almost looks like, yeah, we're going to do what we have to, and then we're going to go up to 50 feet. Is there a commitment? And I'm just asking the question, is there a commitment that we're not going to go over 35 feet? Because that's not in these current questions, but is it going to be something that's going to rear its ugly head in a month?
We will go over a few questions, and we thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you. Like I said, I appreciate you guys. I think you're doing wonderful. At least you gave me a chance to listen to me, you know, and I like that. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Sorry, I didn't get an answer on the
So
55.
we do not do question and answer on
Oh,
this
okay. So-
part. So
All right.
thank you. All right. Is there anybody else here for public comments? I do not see any, so we will close public comments. Or public hearing. My apologies. All right. Moving forward to the Planning Commission deliberation. So there's some items that I think are going to be important for us to cover. And I think that what Commissioner Shelton as well as Commissioner Mills have brought up in regards to the public amenity shrinking, I want to get some additional clarification, because my understanding of this project is all tax increment financing, all development agreement the development agreement was basically done and the plat was done before the TIF was decided. I want to better understand if there was any additional retrades in the original documentation from a public amenity standpoint. And if there were retrades after things were fully inked, decided, and Commissioner Shelton, you might be able to give the best insight to this. I think that is an incredibly important question for us to ask tonight from any modifications. Now, if everything was decided and everything was truly, agreed upon, and this was what was given, I think it's a different situation for this evening. So, Commissioner Shelton, if you could shed some light on that, as well as Jim and Sheldon, if you could go into some of the history of the timing, as well as the potential retrade that was, being stated from Commissioner Shelton as well as Commissioner Mills that shrunk the public amenity. Because my perspective is, if this was shrunk, we need to figure out how to get it back. And from a change, to what is happening here, I think that this is the exact time that we can do so. So, Commissioner Shelton, can you share
Yeah,
your history
let me-
on this?
Let me just say this. I don't think this is the time where we can get it back. And so I'll start with that. I think that question is not before us, and it is not ours. And here's what I would say. You aren't talking about a development agreement. You're talking about a series of at least amendments to the development agreement that changed the economics and the plat and the taxing ramifications over and over again. And it's important to say that the representatives of the people, the city council, or the city council acting as the CDRA, made those decisions, and we are not a body that gets to question them. So if they agreed to reduce the public amenity, it was theirs to do, and it's not ours to question, in my opinion. I don't think the question.
Really quick on that, Commissioner Shelton.
Yeah.
We can impose conditions around the approval of the conditional use permit that could potentially allow for an expansion of the public amenity.
I don't think you can, but maybe you can, and that's a question for someone other than me, I guess. But I think the conditional question here is, can this property be condominiumized? To the extent that there is an agreed upon parking plan by the city council, there is an agreed upon development plan by the city council, the taxing entities have agreed to it to the extent they have, that is not our place to try to renegotiate those questions. And it's tempting to do it. I think we do have some place here, which is in this utility and encroachment coordination. I think we have ground there. We can put a recommendation in that respect, because that again appears to be changing the public benefit and allowing private amenities on the public property, which I don't understand that addition. But I think the extent that we can attack that is to say, in point 3 of these staff recommendations, that we want that to come back to us so that we have some say in that question. But I think the question in front of us doesn't allow us to say, hey, we don't agree that the city council should have taken those parking spaces, and we'd like to give them back. It's not our place. And I say that not being the city council, not being a part of the city council that approved that question. So I'm not saying you don't have any right to overturn the thought that I had when I had a say in the question. But the people who did have a say are the elected officials who have that right, and you have to honor their agreement.
In your opinion, Commissioner Shelton, what conditions do you foresee that we could imply on this project additional to what staff's recommendation is today?
Well, I think you have to say what challenges are they trying to mitigate? What do you want to mitigate related to the question of this being condominiumized or not? That's the question in front of us. And so I think in addition to that, you have this utility encroachment and coordination. I think the recommendation that I would make is that not be an administrative decision, because you're trading on the public property there. I would bring that back to the planning commission once that's negotiated. But on top of the recommendations here, I personally would only add that one.
Okay.
And that would be my inclination as well, is that we understand what the end decision is on the utility and the encroachment, because that is taking space away from the public entity. So I think it would be, I would feel more comfortable making a decision once we knew what that final location is and what that final decision is. Because I agree with Commissioner Shelton that that is, in my view, also the only thing we can do right now outside of what's before us with the condominialization.
Jim, what kind of conditions within a conditional use, or actually this is
This is
a subdivision plat
A
amendment.
subdivision plat.
What kind of conditions can be imposed on that from the city's perspective as well as Shane's perspective? I think that this is a unique one because we have made changes to the development agreement and we are now making changes to the subdivision. And with that, I think that we need, of course, the prowess of the planning team within the city as well as legal to ensure that we are doing everything that we can as a commission. So from the city's perspective, what types of conditions are in allowance for a subdivision plat amendment and the condoization? Because, I think we've got a very specific ordinance around all of those.
Yeah, so it's a good question. As far as the city code and the state law is concerned, a plat is an administrative review. So as long as it meets the standards outlined in the code, there's no real reason to deny a request. Essentially, it's if it checks the boxes of what the code requires, it's more or less approved. With the plat amendment in Title 12 of the city code, that outlines the standards in there. So as far as conditions go, I think the conditions outlined here would be sufficient. Essentially what things haven't been done that need to be done to record the plat. But as far as shifting property lines and changing agreements, that's all part of what the CDRA board and the city council would do. So the question before you tonight is, essentially changing one parcel that used to be an office tower into 36 units. Everything outside of the footprint is not, other than the easements, aren't really on the table for discussion.
Can you shed some light on the concern of the zoning to potentially allow for an increased height?
So all of that's already been done. They've already received a building permit to construct the building. So the height, the site plan, the development agreement, all that has been approved already.
So this specific subdivision plat amendment is not making any adjustments to that. So if somebody tore down and did not continue to build this building, no one can go and build 50 feet? Is that correct?
No, they would have to amend the development agreement. So the development agreement is a very specific project tied to the property. So any changes to that would have to go back through the process. Essentially, like I said, everything's been approved here other than sorting out some of the utility easements and then having a legally recorded document to where they can actually sell condo units. But everything outside of that has been approved and decided in prior discussions.
So the sensitivity of the public to the height issue is that for the condos to the southwest, when they started out with, they were going to encase some of the individual HVAC units, and then it was going to become an outdoor living space, and then it turned into another floor. So there's an enormous sensitivity to this. And so the question I think the public will ask is, what's the number? Like, at what's been approved, and is it specific enough that it's like there's not going to be a structure, there's not going to be antenna, there's not going to be a box over a height?
The elevations that were approved are included in the packet, and it looks like the height, it's on a slope, but the height shows 56 feet. I think is what it says, or 58 feet. I can't see the tiny number, but again, all of that stuff has already been reviewed and approved as part of the development agreement.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
part of the development agreement, they did address the building height, right? And they said it could not exceed the original height of the actual office building. Now, they did look at the existing, the native grade, and based off that, they determined the average height of the structure could be no taller than, I believe, 42 feet across that grade, which kind of pans out. You'll have a high spot close to 50, as it averages out. But per that development agreement, I believe it was like 42 feet was the maximum height of the structure.
And that therein lies the rub. I mean, when we were doing the north gravel pit, we had to get as granular as to say, to strike it from a point, because grade's a little flexible, as it turns out. And so effective grade, I've learned after serving for a period of time, that number has been more malleable than I initially understood it to be. So where we're going to end, I want to make sure that we land where, in a very clear, the public isn't going to be concerned about how tall the building is from whatever the grade is. Effective grade, how many feet above sea level, whatever standard you want, from a planning standpoint, that no structure, no antenna, no HVAC units. Again, we don't protect viewscapes in the state of Utah, but we do have height requirements. And so making sure that it's clear, that, to the gentleman's comment, that there's some perceived flexibility, and I'm confident that you guys have done the homework to make sure that we're not going to effectively see radical changes. And I appreciate that there's already been we're way down the road. So I thank you for the clarification. So you're saying that 58 feet, or is it 42 feet? Which one
So
is it?
it's, the elevations in the packet show the heights at the various elevations of the building. So from the east elevation, the south, the north. So it's here, it's showing, about 158 feet. But again, that's all been established already with the rezone to the mixed use, the development agreement, the site plan review. The Architectural Review Commission also reviewed it and approved it. And so there's been several opportunities to weigh in on the design and height. Tonight, we're only talking about dividing the individual units so that they can legally sell the units. Right now, it's one parcel. They need parcels for each unit.
So their concerns as the public were original zoning allowed for 35 feet. This building is going to far exceed 35 feet.
Correct. And I think the public was understanding of that. But I think from the time that there's a number that's been established, there's a perception that effectively where it landed has changed. And there are multiple projects in and outside of the city that residents will cite as issues with that. Going back to the Cottonwood Business Complex 25 years ago, that, well, the grade turned out to be at a different place, and there's some flexibility because of the expansion of units and the needs to put support apparatus on top of the building. So just making it as crystal clear to the public, I think, is helpful from a hygiene standpoint for staff. And I just think it will eliminate questions. Whatever the number is, I think they'll be able to live with it. So I just, and it sounds like you've made sure that it's very clear so that we could respond to it if it comes before the city council.
The upper roof, based on the plans, is 158 feet tall.
Well, it's 58 feet. The base elevation is 100
Correct.
so the grade is 100, so 58 to the top.
So when it's all said and done, will the height of this building be different, or vastly different, maybe I should say, than the hotel that's already there?
No. So like based on the agreement, right, it did state, and this was based off the plans they submitted for the hotel, right, where they showed the grade was established. They determined the maximum height, which is around 42 feet. So when they did approve the condos, they stated that the building cannot exceed those heights shown on the original plan set that was approved at an average height of like 42 feet.
And the development agreement will supersede any type of zoning
That-
components to
This is a
this.
plan development, yeah. So
Correct.
Per ordinance, they are allowed to go up to 50 feet tall.
And just to get on the record and ensure that we have a clear understanding about the process within the development agreement, as well as the CRDA that was put into place on this. Jim, can you shed some light on the history of what that process looks like? I think there's still a little bit of fogginess in regards to how that process looks, especially from the public amenity side of things. My understanding is we did not pencil anything within the development agreement to allow for this development to happen until everything was clearly defined. And then there's been adjustments to that. There's been exhibits to that. But if you could please, kind of go through the process and the history of this as far as, either the expansion or the contraction of public amenity, as well as just the different levels and stages of how the city processed that and the transparency behind the city's process that has led from dirt, not dirt, this was the Canyon Racquet Club, to, of course, Ensign development or Encore development going through this process.
Yeah, so I mean, as you all know, I wasn't here during that full process. So I can't really speak to the details prior, but I know that anything that's been submitted recently, we've reviewed against what the most recent approval has been to ensure that it meets that standard. So I do know that as part of the public funding through the CDRA and other mechanisms in the city, that the CDRA board and the council and the planning commission have been involved with every step. And that's partly why the applicant isn't requesting any changes to anything that's been approved already, because it has to go through that process again, which can take several months to do. So, they're not looking to change anything because it would involve several taxing entities to sign off, a new negotiated development agreement, the CDRA board, having a hearing for that, coming back to the planning commission. So, this request is really saying we're going to honor everything that's been approved exactly how it is. All we want to do is create the units for the condos, and that's where we're at tonight. So if they did want to change anything that has been approved prior, they would have to go through all those processes to make those requests.
Any further discussion? Are we feeling like we are in a position to make a vote on this tonight? Or are we feeling like we need to continue and get additional information?
Well, for clarification, I don't think we need additional information. I think we need to know what the final results are of these conditions as they are, because this is all we can work with. There's nothing else that, as I understand it, that we can do with this right now. I mean, as I said before, I'd like to know what happens with the utility and encroachment, what that final decision is, before I would feel comfortable moving forward with this. And we do have a meeting in a month, so.
Yeah, so I mean, I think that's okay if you guys feel like you need more time. Just so you guys know, the applicant is up a pretty stiff deadline for financing because they can't get lending to build if they don't have a plat approval to sell units. So I know that I don't know what their deadline was. I think it's probably already passed with the lending firm that they're looking at. So I know this was a step to get the financing they need. So I'm not sure how that would impact them, and the applicant could maybe speak to that. But I guess my question to the planning commission would be, what concerns would you have regarding the easements? Is it just a matter of us reporting back to you, or is that going to sway your decision with what happens? Or do you have preferences on utility locations? Because the city attorney is working with the applicant to draft up the language to make sure that it's going to be ready to record when it goes to the county.
Well, I think my concern is that I want to have that. I think to best utilize the public land, we need to have the most available land. And that if there's some electrical junction box on it, that's already taking away public space, right? So I'd like to know what happens with that and the reasoning behind it. I guess if staff and legal are saying that the end result is going to be that can happen, and why the junction box can't go back to that place in the parking lot that you said originally it was going to be? I'm unclear as to why that can't happen.
Yeah, and I think it can. So you're certainly welcome to make a motion tonight with the condition that the utility box be located on private property. And they could figure out how to make that happen if that's the concern. I just don't want to delay them another month if we don't need to. So if we can address the concerns through a condition of approval tonight, that would be preferred, I think, for everybody. But if you're
I
not
mean, I
comfortable
would
with
be,
that-
I would be comfortable with that because really it's the, as we've talked about, it's the only thing that we can do as any kind of condition. I mean, are these conditions as they've outlined, but we could change the number 3 to have it be that the junction box be put on private property.
I think my only concern with the junction box being put on public or private property is it's counter to what the original agreement was, which it was on the public amenity originally. So I think that is just one thought process, is that is a change where they're just making it in a less
Same thing might be true of the flower box.
What? I'm sorry, I couldn't understand you, Commissioner Shelton.
Could you please repeat yourself, Commissioner Shelton?
I said the same is probably true. Can you hear me?
Yes.
We can.
Yeah, maybe my bandwidth is in trouble here. Okay, so I was saying you have 3 things over in that section that all are really private, and you put them on the public ground. All 3 of those things should probably be on private ground rather than on the ground deeded to the city.
The 3 things being the ventilation, the electrical box. What's the third? The planter?
Flower box.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the reason that came up was the parking structure is there, so it's already existing on the site. In order to get access to the building, the stairwell would have to encroach a couple of feet into that public area. And again, going back to my earlier point, we did talk about options of potentially having the developer purchase that little tiny piece of land from the city, but that again would trigger a whole slew of requirements. And honestly, it would be really difficult because everyone that owns property in that existing plat would have to sign off on that. So all the business owners, the tenants, all the taxing entities that would have to come back to the planning commission. So the path of least resistance was just having an easement and maintenance agreement saying, you guys have access to the building, but the city is not responsible for snow removal, for maintaining the stairs, for maintaining the landscape box, which I think everybody is okay with. With regard to the power box, that was a bigger question as to, is it going to impact the usability of that area? And the applicant has suggested moving it onto the private property just to eliminate it from the conversation. So I think that would be probably the best approach. But as far as access to the building and the ventilation shaft, I don't know if there's really another way to do that without a complete redesign of the building. And our attorneys, the city attorney has been okay with having an access and maintenance agreement for that portion. And the city would be compensated for that as well with whatever the proportional value of that easement would be, or the CDRA, I guess, would be.
I think if what is being represented is true, that this public amenity is continued to shrink after agreements have been placed, I think we need to do as much as we can to get more public amenity and meaning basically moving to the private space. And I think with that, if there is additional access that is difficult, I mean, that is something that, I think can be negotiated, but, maximizing that space. And I think the easements, I mean, that just makes it so that it's completely unusable for any type of public use. So I really like the idea of moving that to private. And that would be basically include the electric box and the vent system, as well as, Jim, you're saying there's also a stairwell situation that we have to approve as well?
No, it's not a stairwell. It's a few stairs that go up to a terrace area. So, I mean, there on the diagram, you can see there's a couple of steps that would go up to a kind of a concrete plaza area. And then the stairwell, the existing stairwell down into the garage is a little bit farther north. So really the only area that would need the easement, so you can see that big blue polygon includes the power box. If that were relocated out of that area, the only spot that would really need the easement would be the planter box noted with L1, kind of that triangle piece, and then a small sliver of land to get to the stairway. But it still would be publicly owned, public access. It would just allow the private party access through that triangle piece of the
So
park.
if we moved that and required it to private, they could not put it in the original place in the public land, correct? So if we move that electric box,
Yeah, it would be relocated to farther north. Do you want to show them with a pointer?
Yeah, again, this somewhere in this area here.
So along the edge of the parking structure, there's no entrances there. It's just the side of the parking. You can see the elevation there. So moving it there could then be screened with landscaping out of the way. And then you have the landscape planter box and the stairway. So, you know, the city's thinking is that little corner isn't really functional from a park perspective anyway. I mean, there's not really a whole lot of amenity or use you can have.
You mean where the
You know, there-
planter box is?
Yeah, where the
Yeah.
easement would be located.
what was the climbing wall that was being proposed?
So the climbing. Yeah, so the climbing wall was being proposed along this wall here,
The retaining
the
wall.
existing retaining wall.
Is that part of the city's property, the public property?
It is.
Yes.
Oh, I didn't realize it went that far. What is the property line for the
Yeah,
city-owned
so if you
piece?
go back to the other exhibit. So the next, or to where the blue shading is.
Oh, okay.
That shows so that dark bold line is the property line. So that blue area is the area that the city owns that they would have an access easement through. So again, by shifting the power box elsewhere, all it would really encapsulate is those few stairs for their entrance, and then the landscaped planter box that they wanted really just to dress up that area. I mean, they could just make it concrete and not have an easement or access agreement there because it would just be city owned.
What is the
But-
programming required under the development agreement for this public amenity?
Nothing's been decided yet. I mean, there's concept plans, but nothing's been approved or funded as far as the park goes.
It's not funded.
Well, the developer's paying for it eventually, but there's not a final design or construction drawings yet. So there's concept plans.
Developer meaning Ensign is developing and
No,
paying
no,
for it, or is that
McCandless.
Gates?
Yeah, whoever the developer, I'm not sure. I'd have to read the development agreement, but it was going to be donated to the city.
So I guess that's an important question. So is that the condo developer who is doing so, or is that the master developer who is handling all of that?
That I don't know. I'd have to read the development agreement. to
I'm
know.
pretty confident it's a master developer. So I mean, Ensign has got their piece. So I mean, they will indirectly because of the relationship, but the whole park will not be this is part of the master development.
Okay.
Chair, I have one clarification. We can bring back the proposed recommendations. So going to 2, if I'm boiling my concerns down, when we go to the words, those, including those necessary to ensure and necessary, that is going to be defined by staff. Because the statement at the end is, as it shall be drafted and approved by the city, which means rather than this body determining it, you as a staff are now going to define whether this, we're turning over the responsibility for what you determine is necessary to ensure the public pedestrian access. So if we're going to, in the name of being expeditious tonight, because of the circumstance that the developer finds themselves in, we are giving you control or determining whether or not it is necessary to ensure that public pedestrian access. So I would just want to clarify that you're comfortable that wherever you land on this, and I think I've made it pretty clear and members of the public what the hope is, and that there's some malleability that as staff and the developer work together on that, that what you determine is necessary to ensure public pedestrian access will take into consideration whatever information you've gleaned from this evening. I think that's a pretty significant consideration that we are going to give over some of our responsibility to staff. And if we feel comfortable that they're going to be good stewards of that, answering that question, then I'm anxious for us not to slow the process any more than is necessary. But I think it's incumbent on us to realize that, it has been a history lesson, I believe, tonight, and I anticipated that it probably would be, and I hope it's been informational, and even for the developer who inherits something and has to hear the version of the master developer, just understand what the public is hoping for. And I realize confidently that there is quite a wide berth in terms of where this can land. I hope we can land on something improved. So I'm comfortable, and I appreciate the consideration, Chair, to ask the questions I've asked. I know it's been a difficult night, but with that understanding, I can live with item number 2 as a recommendation personally, and I appreciate the conversations also and feel similarly about condition number 3, that to both of you, that if we can try to maximize what the public benefit is, wherever that lands, we again are ceding some control over to the developer and to staff, that where it's going to land is going to be in the best interests of the public as much as is reasonable.
I think it's really difficult for us to impose on public amenity without knowing the programming of the public amenity. You know, it's a precarious corner of the public amenity, but it still is the public amenity. So until we know the programming, I don't want to have any implications that are going to prevent any aspect of programming. When you had mentioned, Jim, I just want to make sure I'm hearing correctly. You had mentioned that there's possibility of that just turning into just a concrete pad. I mean, that's not determined at this point. So that is still to be negotiated. So my feeling on this is that we need to get all private owned development structure off of the public amenity. And, gain, whatever that's, 500 square feet, 1,000 square feet max maybe of public amenity. That's my gut in regards to item number 3. I feel comfortable with everything else on this, with some of those implications and the staff's opinions and expertise on the easements and access and maintenance agreements. But I think that removing the utility and encroachment coordination and requiring that to go onto private land, I think would be to the betterment of the public and the betterment of the land use here.
I would agree.
I can live with that.
And I would feel comfortable moving forward with this and, with those conditions to, not have to push this to another meeting and hold out on any type of lending components here. Is there anything else, staff, that we need to consider in that regards?
Yeah, let me actually send this to Sheldon so we can share it. So I've got a concept plan of the park space, and it looks very similar to what's being proposed for that corner. So if you're interested in seeing it, we can project it on there. Let me see. I just sent it to you, so you got it. Okay, so here you can see this is one of the most recent concept plans that was drafted. And zooming in on that, I guess, southwest corner of the property, you can see that was always intended to be an entrance. Kind of scroll over there, and then you can see a couple of stairs as well going up to that area. I don't know if you can zoom in a little bit more. Yeah, that's good. So I guess that's a concept that was created, and that entrance area wouldn't really change from what this proposal is. And again, the balance of the public property hasn't been fully designed. I mean, this is a concept that we can send out to bid, but that was the intent, is to have that be more of a kind of an alcove for pedestrian access. But the stairwell and the landscape planter that are shown that would be part of that easement would be consistent with the concept plans that were already provided.
Is the dark black line, is that the outline of the building as it stands today?
Yeah, I believe so. So the parking garage stairway you see with the arrow, so that would be the stairway. Let's see.
So where those benches are sitting for the climbing wall, is that roughly where the electric box is proposed to go?
More or less.
Okay.
Yeah, but again, if you were to make the condition that the electric box be relocated outside of that area, I think the applicant, and I think Rocky Mountain Power has actually coordinated with them and said that there's a better option off of this little alcove. But as far as the stairways and the landscape planter, those are still consistent with what was previously incorporated into the park design. So again, I don't know if that, 50 square feet or whatever area it is going to have any impact really on the public use of that space. But requiring that they not encroach into that area would involve tens of thousands of dollars of redesign. I mean, they've already started building the structure, but it would also include probably 6 months to a year of renegotiating everything through the CDRA project. So, I mean, from my perspective, it wouldn't make a lot of sense to encumber the developer in that way when the plan already shows that those features are there as part of the amenity. And they would still be publicly owned. There would just be an easement saying that the building would have access through there, which they would anyway because it's a public park. It's really just saying that the city's not responsible for any maintenance or incidents that would occur in that little corner. So
as a commission, would you feel comfortable just having the electric box move to private and then allowing for everything else?
Yes.
I feel comfortable with that.
Input on that?
Yes.
So originally just to clarify a couple of issues, originally the junction box was on public land. It was actually in a kind of a more obvious location and just past the roundabout. And where it's proposed to be is actually hiding it better and can be covered better, and it's also where Rocky Mountain Power requested that it be. So initially, the initial plan was approved with the junction box on public land, and we have worked with Rocky Mountain Power. We put it into a more hidden, not obvious place, but it's also where Rocky Mountain Power has requested for it to be. And so I'm not sure where else you could put it, but anyway, on that. And then the other point I wanted to make is the access there is actually an ADA ramp that we're maintaining or proposing that we maintain and give access to the parking, because that's the entrance for parking, for public parking underground to access the park. And so that's part of the reason for the easement, is to open the access for the public to get into the underground parking in and out for the park. Anyway, any further questions on that?
As it stands. Thank you. How are we feeling? We feel like we can make a motion.
Okay, I'll go ahead. I move to approve project SUB 26-001, a request by Chris Ensign with Encore Development LLC to amend Unit 2B of the Canyon Center condominiums, amended number 1 plat, and a portion of Lot 1 of the Canyon Center subdivision plat to plat 36, previously approved residential units, City File CUP 24016, in a condominium form of ownership at 7367 South Canyon Center Parkway, subject to the findings and conditions listed in the staff report dated February 4th, 2026, with the change being in number 3, that the electrical junction box and related infrastructure be moved to private property.
So we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Commissioner Anderson did the motion. Commissioner Polson, second. All right. Any further discussion on this? Okay. Commissioner Mills,
Yes.
Commissioner Lugo,
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson,
Yes.
Commissioner Smith,
Yes.
Commissioner Shelton,
Yes.
Commissioner Barnes,
Yes.
Commissioner Steinman, yes. All right. Thank you. We will move forward to project CUP -26-002.
All right. Okay, let me just pull it up really fast. Okay. There we go. All right, so this is for CUP 26002. The applicant is Spencer Thomas and the property owner is Dan Northrup. The request is a conditional use approval for the operation of an emissions testing shop located at 1344 Fort Union Boulevard, and the staff recommendation is to approve with conditions. And then we've indicated the property on the site plan. So the applicant is seeking approval to operate Emissions Plus, which is a test-only vehicle emissions testing facility at 1344 Fort Union within the regional commercial zone. The business would be solely for emissions testing and optional DMV renewal services, with customers remaining in their vehicles throughout the process and no vehicle repair or maintenance proposed. The business plans to operate Monday through Saturday, serve approximately 20 to 40 vehicles per day, and staff 2 employees on site. No site modifications are proposed at this time beyond removing boards from the windows. And then we've indicated the current zoning on the map. 1940-030B allows motor vehicle service-related uses as a conditional use within the CR zone. The proposed emissions testing facility qualifies under this category as it does not involve outdoor repair or storage. An existing emissions testing facility, Jiffy Lube, is located across the street within the same zoning district. And conditional uses are governed by Chapter 1984 and may be approved if potential impacts can be mitigated through conditions. And then we've included a proposed circulation diagram from the applicant showing their parking and then how vehicles would enter and exit the property. This project received no public comments. And then staff finds that the conditions proposed by this application are consistent with the purpose of the CR zone, which is to provide areas for commercial uses that serve the community, the region, and the traveling public by accommodating larger scale, land-intensive commercial uses that are not well suited for neighborhood locations. We recommend to approve with conditions, and the recommended conditions of approval are that the applicant shall obtain and maintain a valid Cottonwood Heights business license for the duration of the operations. All client parking shall be accommodated off-street within the existing property. The business shall not rely on on-street parking or adjacent off-property parking lots. The business shall be limited to emissions testing and DMV renewal as stated in the application. A building permit shall be obtained for any exterior signage and other alterations to the premises that normally require a building permit. Any exterior signage and other exterior alterations will meet the guidelines outlined in the Gateway Overlay District. Approval of this conditional use permit is subject to review or revocation upon complaint or evidence of noncompliance with the conditions of approval or applicable city codes, and any expansion or change in the scope of the business shall require additional city review and approval.
Wonderful. Thank you. We will now move to, is the applicant here? Wonderful. Would you like to speak on behalf of this project?
My backup playing airsoft with my kids. I'm getting old. Yeah, pretty much. We've been in business for about 30 years now. This will be our 12th location, and this is all we do. We just do emissions testing. We kind of take that, probably not the most fun thing that you guys have to do on a yearly basis. We try to make it as easy and as pain-free and just as quick as we can. We just try to make it not painful anymore for you guys. So we just feel like it'd be a good thing for the city to have.
Wonderful.
Yeah. Do you guys have any questions for me?
This is the site right now where there's a gas station
Correct.
that's not in operation.
Correct.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah.
You signed it's a lease, right?
Correct.
Yeah. How long?
Right now it goes for about a year and a half.
Year and a half lease?
Yeah. And we're hoping, we're hoping we can purchase the property if we can work out a deal with
Someone made a comment. I'm not familiar with emissions testing, but educate me on the environmental impacts, not being enclosed versus exposed.
zero. I mean, it's the emissions test that we do takes roughly 3 or 4 minutes. It's an OBD test. The car will pull up, open the door. We access the OBD2 port. We take some information, take some pictures on the car, submit it into the county, the emissions machine, and then that's it.
Operating hours?
8 to 6, Monday through Friday, 8 to 5 on Saturday, and then closed on Sunday.
You typically have more customers coming at certain times than others?
End of the month.
End of the month?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
then,
last day of
yep.
the month. It's
During what about during that day, end of the month, like mornings, afternoons?
It usually can stay pretty steady, but at the speed at which we test, I mean, we can usually keep up where maybe we get a couple cars in line, but especially in a new place like this, I don't anticipate a line of cars at all. I mean, it's going to be pretty quick in and out. It should be zero impact with everybody around us.
Thanks. That's all I have. Thanks.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I would just note that presently I'm familiar with that area. I live just around the corner there, and it's a gas station that's been out of operation for some time now.
Yeah.
But I suspect the traffic flow that you would anticipate would be less than what was going through the gas station on a regular day when it was in
Yes.
operation.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we're anticipating 20 to 40 cars a day. And like I said, it takes about 5 minutes a car.
Yeah.
One of the things we
Yeah.
talked about in the work session was the concern with people trying to turn left, exiting.
Uh-huh.
So we did talk about the possibility of some kind of signage there. I'm sorry, I don't know if you were there because my back was turned to the people who were at the work session. So just want to make you aware that that is a
Okay.
concern, because one of our concerns is the safety of the public, right? And so doing everything we can to mitigate any kind of issues. But I guess I'm not sure how that all works with, but just so you're aware that that's something we
Oh,
talked
yeah.
about, a concern with people trying to turn left across Fort Union.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, you guys tell us to jump. We say how high. So whatever you guys recommend, we'll do.
That is a difficult intersection. There's a lot of business activity there in that area, and a lot of people do want to turn left onto Fort Union there, and it's a difficult turn. So, but I don't know if that's the purview of what we need to talk about tonight so much, but.
Wonderful. Any other questions for the applicant?
I'm excited that you guys are interested in potentially buying the property. Do you have any concerns about a decommissioned gas station and kind of the process? You heard us speaking about that a little bit. You
We've done it
educated
before.
pool.
Yeah, we actually just purchased an old decommissioned gas station in Murray, 39th South and 5th East. And so we're aware of the process. We actually just purchased another one in Sandy on 86 South and 7th East. That was an old gas station. So yeah, we're aware with the tanks and all that and environmental testing, and yeah, we've done it a few times.
Is that a financial burden that you feel like if there's a reasonable degree of success that you guys are willing to
Oh, yeah.
shoulder?
Yep.
Okay.
We are.
Do you have any concerns, just as the property sits right now, about excess gas or leakage into adjacent soil, whatever the condition that's going on under there for a gas station that's 50 years old?
No, right now, no. We don't see any signs of anything that we think is going to be impacting the environment.
Would that affect your willingness to buy the property?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think we've done it before where we've had to take gas tanks out, and it wouldn't be our first or second time doing it. So it's something that I think we're willing to do, and we're willing to clean it up and make sure it's in compliance.
It's reassuring. I mean, we are hoping that, that sometimes turnover in businesses is tricky, and that obviously wouldn't be a condition of anything related to our approval, but a year
lot
and
of
a half
businesses-
lease is super short, but the fact that we get that you're dipping your toe in the water a
Yeah.
little bit with hopes that things could go well.
Yeah, like I say, we've been in business for about 30 years. We're actually the #1 emissions testing company in Utah. So we've been around the block a couple times, and we've done that. We've cleaned up gas stations before. Generally, it's something a lot of businesses stay clear of. Once they hear that there's old gas tanks in the ground, a lot of people run away. But nope, we've taken them out, and we've done it, I think, 3 or 4 times now on properties we've bought.
Well, congratulations on your success, and I hope if all goes well, we can welcome you to Cottonwood Heights.
Us too.
Wonderful. Any other questions for the applicant?
Thank you. All right, thank you.
Thank you. We will now open the public hearing for this, and I do not see any public here for the public hearing, nor is there anybody online currently.
We don't take public comments online.
Perfect. We will then close the public hearing. Planning Commission deliberation on this. How are you feeling?
I'm excited to see that property improved. It's been not really an eyesore, but it's been needing something to happen.
I agree.
I agree.
I agree. I think it's a good use.
Wonderful.
You ready for a motion, Chair?
We are ready for a motion.
I move to approve item CUP-26-002 pursuant to the conditions of the approval outlined in item staff report.
We have a first from Commissioner Mills,
I second.
second from Commissioner Lugo. Any further discussion?
Just a question. Do we, and of course, it's up to all of us, but how strongly do we feel about having a condition be that there be a right turn only sign? I would like to add that as a condition of approval.
I think we should.
I don't know that you can do that without affecting all the other businesses in that area, though. I mean, you're going to have all those by the UPS store and,
What we're talking about for the exit for this business, because their
I know it's
flow
down the
of
road a little bit.
traffic, you know.
I believe there is only one access to this property currently, so I believe we could put that condition in place for right-hand turn. Is there only one?
Are you referring to the west? The west exit does service, I believe, the retail center.
So I guess
does.
I'm going to just say the actual parcel, and there is only one entrance and exit onto Fort Union. There is also a exit to a adjacent development, which I don't believe we need to make any implications on that for turning, just because it's not going on to Fort Union. But specifically in regards to the entrance and exit on Fort Union, is that what you're proposing, Commissioner Anderson?
Yes, only for this property.
I would feel comfortable with that. So basically, just to reiterate what you're stating, the northeast entrance to Fort Union, there would be a sign that is right-hand turn only sign there.
Correct.
How's the rest of the commission feel about that?
I guess I have a question on how it would affect his business with people that are needing to go westbound. Like, will they go to the competition across the street where they can
Well,
make?
but at that point, they're already in the business. We're not talking about on Fort Union. So they've come into the business, they've had their emissions tested, and now they want to exit. So when they exit, there'd be a right turn only sign there
To head
to go east, yeah.
Right,
And if
so
they
don't have
needed
the
to,
ability to go west.
I mean, they can do whatever they want. But we're, the recommendation is that it's right turn only.
And I do believe that that is a double yellow line, if I remember correctly.
Yes, you're right.
To cut west on that, it is double yellow.
Which is technically illegal.
So it is illegal. So it's more so of a safety precaution and a recommendation of the applicant to make sure that this is cohesive and they're recommending safety and to follow the law.
are we able to require that or can we recommend that?
We can make that as a condition, I believe. Yes. Okay, so we have a motion from Commissioner Mills on this.
I would accept that as a friendly amendment if we want to just from Robert's rules, keep it clean. So that would modify the original amendment to include the staff description and Commissioner, if you want to make sure that we phrase that correctly about the left-hand turn.
And that a right turn only
Right turn.
sign be added at the exit of this business.
Yeah, so added.
Wonderful. We have a motion from Commissioner Mills and a friendly amendment approved by Commissioner Mills by Commissioner Anderson and a second from Commissioner Lugo.
Yes.
Wonderful. We will now go to vote. Commissioner Barnes,
Yes.
Commissioner Lugo,
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson,
Yes.
Commissioner Smith,
Yes.
Commissioner Polson,
Yes.
Commissioner Mills,
Yes.
Commissioner Shelton,
Yes.
Commissioner Steinman, yes. Project SUB or CUP 26-002 is approved with conditions. Next on the agenda is the approval of January 21st, 2026 Planning Commission minutes. And in this, I have not had appropriate time to properly review all of those minutes. So I'm going to make a proposal to move approval of consent agenda to our March 4th Planning Commission, if you are all comfortable with that. Wonderful.
We need to make a motion to do so, I believe.
We end to, yeah,
Yeah, you can just continue it to the next.
continue
Okay.
to date certain.
Wonderful.
I will be happy to make a motion that we move the review of the January 21, 2026 Planning Commission meeting minutes to March 4th, 2026.
Wonderful. We have a motion from Commissioner Anderson,
Second.
second from Commissioner Mills, and I will do a single vote on this. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Next on the agenda.
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.